even though it feels good, the only thing I've been doing is take that L, Yank.
To the Middle East because a British cargo ship has been attacked.
This is what I see when I'm having a panic attack. These are my fever dream demons. This is what I see. Motherfuckers got more makeup on than I don't even know what. They are the standard, dude. Skinwalking looking ass motherfuckers. More makeup than Donald Trump. That's fucking funny. What's up, Anarchist Tech Support? United States says, Britain, please, guys, like, can you, like, go, like, shoot somebody and shit so we can say this is a global conflict and throw a couple of nukes in there for the lulz. Chat, I gotta keep repeating it because you gotta learn it. What Iran is doing with the Strait of Hormuz, okay, in order basically using it as an economic nuclear weapon, tell the world, like, if you fuck with us, this is what you fucking get, okay? When it drops a little fucking drone on a boat, which is a fire that gets contained, that's not the real power. You know what the real power is? 820,000 views in 5 hours. Building a narrative around the Strait of Hormuz is being incredibly dangerous, which increases insurance premiums and oil prices. This is an intelligence agency conflict on the Strait of Hormuz, not one done by drone operators. And that is why it is so supremely impressive. Supremely impressive. This is nothing you can really do about it unless Iran guarantees the safety for all passing vessels, meaning that they would be the one tracking down and killing anybody that attempts to destabilize it. The United States of America, if it actually wants the Strait of Hormuz to not be a problematic region anymore, if they want to stabilize the movement of oil and gas, they either have to have a long war in which they literally occupy Tehran and install their government. But there's no going back on this. Ever, okay? Because why in the nine hells would Iran, that has now proven to itself that it can control the Strait of Hormuz, why would it not continue to do so? Or at least threaten to do so in case of any potential invasion, rendering it in effect almost as powerful as a nuclear missile. You don't need a nuke anymore, is what this motherfucker's saying. The Americans gifted them one. Schrodinger's nuke, bro. You know what unipolarity is? I love talking about unipolarity. Unipolarity is when, for one country waging war, is holding a decapitated body of your child in your own hands because a supersonic fucking missile flew through your house basically on random, and you're fighting a nation, a country, and a people who participate in that same war, and when they participate, aka their nation participate, the greatest damage they can feel while you hold the corpse of your child is price of nuggies has increased and gas is slightly higher. That is unipolarity. That is the lack of balance. Where war means something very, very, very different for the core of empire and for nations and peoples that are feeling it on. That is why unipolarity is. Because there is no way you can, on average, systemically, motivate a population that has never felt it on their own skin to violently oppose the imperialism of their own country. It's the biggest blowback you get when your nation invades someone is price hikes and maybe one or two 9/11s from time to time. That's it. What's the incentive? Well, turns out the incentive can also be price hikes. It's just profoundly inefficient. Can you imagine how much less war the United States would wage if lobbing missiles in another country would mean missiles will be lobbed to New Jersey? That's why they're not fucking dropping paratroopers in Moscow or Beijing, okay? Because only nuclear armed states can potentially blow up New Jersey. Do you understand? And if somebody blows up New Jersey, every fucking American, just like any other citizen on any place, would look at their government and be like, what the fuck are you doing? I don't want no fucking war. And the reason there are so many Americans in the States, particularly the States, I'm sorry, but particularly the States, because that's the only superpower, unipolarity, that there's like 50-60% of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, whoever that support a war. The only reason a population like this can exist is because there's a low chance that their house catches on fire, and there's a low chance that they will be holding their own child decapitated. Okay? So we love talking about mutually assured destruction with nuclear missiles, etc., etc. But in multipolarity, even countries that do not have nuclear missiles can ensure a certain degree of mutual destruction against an enemy who chooses to pursue war. That's one of the 7,535 reasons why unipolarity is bad. Not because I want New Jersey to be blown up, but because of the simple thesis of if there was ever a chance of New Jersey being blown up, then those 60-70% of Americans that support conflicts would turn into 5 or 4%, okay?
The latest in a series of events in the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz that show Iran is testing the fragile ceasefire.
No worries.
Ask
questions.
A naval blockade is considered a military act.
Yes.
A military act receives a military response. Let them understand this. From now on, they should assign several additional escorts to their destroyers so that if one of them starts sinking, they can at least rescue and evacuate their naval forces.
Oh, how Britain has fallen, man.
While the region waits to see how Iran will respond to the latest U.S. proposal to end the war, President Trump shared a series of AI images overnight depicting Iran's navy at the bottom of the sea. President Trump was asked over the weekend about the expected Iranian response, saying this.
Do you think they're slow-rolling it? Do you think they're intentionally slow-rolling the process?
We'll find out soon enough.
Slow rolling it. Dude is so cooked. Not slow rolling anything. They're just calling a bluff. Of course you can call a bluff. This is their main strength. Fuck.
I'm curious what your experience has been in Israel. Do you get the same sense that they want hostilities to end?
Oh yes, Israel loves peace. We love peace, but the only way for us to achieve peace, destroying all our neighbors. Israel loves peace, but in order to achieve it, it has to kill everyone else. Absolutely everyone else must die, and then we will have peace. They're waging this war incredibly peacefully and saying it's not incredibly peaceful the way they're attacking their neighbors, killing thousands upon thousands of Lebanonians. That's the proper name. It's not Lebanese. Lebanonian. You're anti-Sema. You're anti-Susu. You're anti-Surah. We will be called an anti-Surah.
Of course, Trey, is the complication of going into a war like this with a partner, because just naturally you're going to have different goals.
The United States of America and Israel have absolutely identical long-term goals. They might disagree on short-term goals. This has a shit ton of precedents, including when it comes to the relationship between Israel and the United States, but also when it comes to core of empire and periphery of empire itself throughout the centuries. So yeah, that's basically the case.
Israel, who has much longer term goals. Some sources I've had have said that they have killed more Iranian leaders than probably we should have in terms of leaving hardliners in place and having killed some moderates, which makes it more difficult to negotiate. So there's that complication.
You see, this again, unipolarity. Only in unipolarity can the invading country sit in a fucking TV studio and casually talk about, it's difficult for us to talk to them because we fucking killed everybody. We're too good at our job. Fucking killed everybody. Without a literal missile being lobbed at their fucking studio, you understand? Because if they were actual neighbors of Iran or equals when it comes to military capability, there's potential for that, so they wouldn't be saying crazy shit like this, right? That's why unipolarity is freaky. For one group, it is death. For another, it is content.
I'm not here to speak on behalf of what's in the best interest of China, but it's obvious. China is an export-driven economy. That means they depend on other countries to buy from them. Well,
not anymore, motherfucker. They're developing in the opposite direction, bitch boy. Export-driven. I mean, it makes a lot of money from export, but you know what else it has? A very rapidly increasing consumer base of 1 billion plus people in China itself. My guy is like, ooh. My guy, it's not 1995, bitch.
We're now joined by U.S. Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright. You advise the president. What are you advising him now?
Well, the main advice we're giving right now is 47-year-long conflict. The world simply cannot live with a nuclear-armed Iran. Everyone in this government knows it.
Yeah, you know what the world also cannot live with but more? An unstable fucking oil market. It's like covering Iran at this point has been tiring, because even though it feels good, the only thing I've been doing is take that L, Yank! Want to hear The Economist on China. Oh my god, this is a high budget fucking podcast room, motherfuckers.
Talk about this extraordinarily important question that people have debated for a long time of when China might become the biggest economy in the world, measured just in pure dollars at market exchange rates. Simon, we had a cover on this a few years ago about peak China, and there was an extraordinary chart in this showing the various projections that have been made and how the debate has shifted. Do you want to talk us through that?
Sure, yeah. So on the horizontal axis, you have years, beginning
at the start of this century and stretching right out to 2070. And then importantly, on the vertical axis, what you're seeing are percentages. That's China's GDP as a percent of US GDP. So it's a comparison of China's GDP relative to America's. So when it gets to 100, it's level with America. So these are forecasts of where China will be relative to America made at different times in the past. Not only has the date at which China might overtake shifted, but also the trajectory, if you like, of China after that point. So we used to assume that China would overtake at some point and then the lead would continue growing. That view has changed. And a few years ago, Goldman Sachs updated their projections and had China overtaking a bit later and then plateauing. So the two were running roughly neck and neck for quite a few years out to 2070. Even more recently, the OECD now thinks perhaps it'll never overtake at all. And you see this peak where it gets right level with America and then starts actually losing ground.
Yes, this is how statistics work. You start losing ground right as you reach parity. What's the implication here? The United States of America starts a nuclear war with China, and that's why it starts declining right as it reaches parity. Like, I would take the OECD graph far more seriously if it never reaches parity. Why does it immediately drop when it reaches parity? That implies a Cold War in which the United States proactively sabotages China. Probably they have like 50 other reasons why, but sorry, I am going to visibly hyper-focus on the fact that it declines post-parity because that's what this graph is fucking. So I have to think that the parity impacts the decline. The only reason parity will impact the decline is if somebody who you're pairing with not wanting you to pair and therefore doing something. Call it the freedom asymptote. Utopian wars with China, but at what cost? Also, you're going to be seeing a shit ton more these OECD guys doing this the closer China gets, right? Also, like here we are looking at comparison of GDP. Okay, China is a partially centrally planned economy. If GDP number go up, the ability for it to utilize it is very different than a pure free market like the United States of America. If you give $1 to the US, you give $1 to China. In China, 40 cents up or down is managed by the so-called controlled market, and 60% is managed from the center. Okay, and in the United States, 90% is money that engages in the free market. Okay, so if you want to do your best steer your country in a direction that is healthy for it, both on the international playing field, but also for your own population, if you happen to care about that. Of course, the country that has more control over, say it as simply as possible, of where money is used is going to have a lot more leverage because they control a bigger part of the ship, let's call it. They will be able to direct it much easier than the Americans that only have the ability to direct 10% of the shit. It is the market that sometimes motivates the United States of America to work against its own interests because of potential short-term profitability. Don't even get me started on how a socialized economy, even one that is severely, for the time being, lacking in socialization in the People's Republic of China, at that 50 to 60% of, what is quote-unquote planned. Even with that, this has basically a superpower over long-term growth against the Yang. The TLDR, the more planned your economy is, the better you can steer it, unless you do not have the ability to properly plan it. But that is a problem that the Soviets sometimes struggled with, and not only Soviets, Yugoslavs, everybody, etc. But now with the tech that we have is much easier. That you want to leave to the market, just leave to the market. I'm talking about the dangest. How does this relate to this? Even if China generates a lot less, China's GDP is a lot less, it can potentially do more with less than America can do with an astronomically higher number, right? Let's say the United States has $100, okay? And China has $60. And if we agree that only 50% of the Chinese economy is directly and proactively stirred by the Chinese Communist Party, okay? What does that mean? That means that out of those 60, they can properly direct $30. Over in America, we got $100. But out of those $100, they can only steer 10. Let's say 20. Fucking, are you kidding me? But let's say 20. China, the state, gets to play with 30. In the US, it only gets, in best case scenario, to play with 20. That's why 1 is not equal to 1. And actually $100 is not more than $60. Because motherfucker, you are looking at revenue and not profit.
We asked people in the newsletter whether they thought China would ever become the world's biggest economy, and here is the verdict. We can see that a big majority, 74% of viewers, think that China will eventually overtake the US, with a plurality saying it will happen in the 2030s. Only 26% of people agree with that OECD line from Simon's chart.
I think as it stands, I'm with the 26% here. I'm in the never camp. I think that's not because I think the Chinese economy does have some sort of life left in it yet. I think it's still very low income relative to where it could be. I think the demographic issue is really
very low income, meaning like we need more trillionaires so that average income rises only in fiction.
I would say here is I'm partly less interested in the Chinese side, where I think the misallocation and the demographics are a big problem. This seems
misallocation, there you go. Little fucking son of Jakub here pissed off that the Asians figured out how to socialize a part of their economy. Overblown automation can more than make up for a declining population. Is that what he means by demographic? No way. No, I thought it was something more complicated than that. The fuck, chat. The demographic issue to this gentleman is that because they're not breeding as much, there's going to be less people to operate the machines. No way. No way is this naive. No way. No way. In the era of automation in the People's Republic of China. This guy's a fucking imbecile. Sorry, I thought he had more going for him. Does this man think everybody in China is sitting and pulling a lever or stuff? Automation will compensate for this. Automation will massively fucking compensate for this. Hell, China quote-unquote overhires because a big part of its economy is centrally planned and they don't want unemployment because they're fucking socialists. But yeah, TLDR, no, automation will compensate for a lack of manual labor. Quote-unquote cheap labor has already been overutilized in China. So that being fucking, and if there's one country that will, the role that the central planning plays in it, that will be able to adequately help a big part of its population to re-enter alternative markets that they've not worked in before, aka other fields, it's the PRC.
I'm in the never camp as well, I think. I think that's partly, it's a policy choice really for the government, and we've seen in recent years they have de-emphasized GDP growth targets. They're trying to emphasize what they call high quality growth, which is ultimately growth which is you're not intended to generate optimal economic activity
and to have more access to resources for the wider population. It's not about optimal economic activity, but it's about contributing to the state, the nation, and the people, which is not optimal. Economists are not real people. All of them, unironically, don't think that China is going to overtake because they think it's too fucking commie. Because it does not know how to adequately allocate. But then again, I might be a dick here because if we're only talking about GDP, I guess maybe this sort of argument can be made. But they are talking about China overtaking the states. Only the graph talked about GDP.
But America might subsequently re-overtake China. That's not a view that's original to me. I think it was first set out by Capital Economics, a research firm, and they said this is the ideal outcome.
So he's citing Capital Economics, a firm that said maybe America is going to fall behind China and then retake it again. And also maybe then China is also going to retake them and then they're going to be number one, number two, number one. I am a scientist. I love how he's citing like a hot take. Let me cite my hotetake.
I think I'm probably in the never camp.
Okay. Motherfucker said nothing. I think.